Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's ranking Star Trek's counselors, communication, and morale officers. This video is part of a series of videos where I rank the characters from the various Star Trek series at a particular profession from the order of which I think they are most capable of performing said profession. So, in this video I'm reaching a bit because I'm trying to lump like each characters into one particular category, but I found that there was a few ones where all the shows didn't connect, so I kind of lumped counselor and morale officers. Although there's only one morale officer I'm aware of, but they're very similar, so that was fine. But communication officers that is a bit of a stretch. They don't really perform the same job, but I found that it kind of just matches the series that don't have counselors have communication officers, and the series that don't have communication officers have counselors. So it just worked out that way. And plus, I guess they all deal with communication in some way or another, even if you're a counselor. So yeah, it is a bit of a stretch, but I'm going to rank them all together as one, even though communication officers more of deal with communicating with other ships and punching through the communications and languages and stuff like that, where counselors more deal with, and morale officers more deal with people's feelings and making sure that everyone is feeling well enough and happy and ready to perform their jobs well. But anyway, I'm going to rank them anyway. So, as always, I choose one character from each of the Star Trek series, so only one. So here are the characters that I am going to rank. First is Horra from the original series, and then Deanna Troy from Next Generation, ESRI Dax from Deep Space Nine, Neelix from Voyager, and Hoshi from Enterprise, and Bryce from Star Trek Discovery. Pretty straightforward there. So let me rank these officers. And as always, this isn't about which character I personally like or the ones that I think are well written or that I like watching on the screen. It's about who I think is best at their job. So who would I want on my bridge or on my ship performing the job of either a communications officer or counselor or morale officer? Which one of them would I think performs best at their duties? So I will start with my number 6, my bottom of the list pick, and that would be Bryce from Discovery, because this is basically a nothing character. He has pretty much zero character development, and he doesn't really contribute that much to anything. Like, he doesn't, like, I had to look up his name because I can't even remember what his name was, because he doesn't really do anything. And it's been 3 seasons of Discovery, and he's yet to be developed. After even the original series, with some of their characters were really underdeveloped and just in the background, but after 3 seasons, like, they have more development. Like, you know more about them, even if it isn't that much. Whereas here with Bryce, like, I virtually know nothing about him. In fact, I get him confused with the other characters because he doesn't do much. He just sits there and says, "Oh, you're being healed," and this blah blah blah. I think he helped, like, in the season 3 finale, he helped Tilly fight off the whatever future version of the Orion Syndicate was called. I can't remember, but the stupid thingy. But still didn't do much. So he's at the bottom. So next. Second to the bottom on my list will be ESRI Dax. Now, I do like ESRI as a character. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. I actually think she's an interesting character, but she's not very good at her job. Let's be fair here. In fact, she performed better at other jobs, like from skills she had from previous hosts, better than ESRI's skill, which was supposed to be a counselor, but yet we never really see her do any counseling. Like, she's good at like war tactics, and she's good at like criminal investigation, and sometimes even engineering. But counseling, she never really did much. Like, there's her introductory episode where she was supposed to counsel Garrick, and it took her forever to figure out that he was feeling guilty over helping the Federation defeat the Cardassian people, which is a duh. He should have figured it out. In fact, she gave him bad advice to begin with. That being said, like in the Siege of AR-558, she was sort of helping the soldiers who were trapped there and under harsh conditions. She was helping them sort of deal with their trauma. And she did help Nog a bit deal with his trauma after he got injured after said battle. Yet she let him spend too much time with Vic Fontaine. So I mean, she's okay. That's why I put her ahead of Bryce, but she's not a very good counselor, let's be fair here. So, and she was like a total mess too. Like, she was a mess emotionally. That's not a very good counselor if you can't even control your own emotions. Anyway, let me get into the next pick, which is Deanna Troy. Now, Deanna Troy is a hard one because I think the writers couldn't get her right, because sometimes she is great at her job, but more often than not, I found she actually sucks at her job. She's supposed to have empathic powers, yet she never seems to warn Picard at the right times where she should have been able to sense things coming. And she tends to give like bad advice, and I don't know, for the most time, I think she actually is more harmful. Like, I'm thinking of the episode The Lost, where she, like, turned into the world's biggest asshole because she lost her empathic powers. And I said in my review of that episode that and she was like, I quit, I can't do my job. I was like, well, if you need your empathic powers to do your job, then you don't deserve your job. Plain and simple. She sucks at her job. She's just too dependent on her edge, her advantage that she has over everyone else, and uses that to skate by. That's the message I got from that episode. And that time where Picard was tracking down this like billion or trillion year old archaeological puzzle in the episode The Chase, and it was obvious that Picard needed to do this, and yet Troy like badgered him over, oh, you're just feeling guilty because your mentor died, and you should go to these boring conferences, blah 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 blah. And Picard rightfully put her into place and yelled at her and be like, no. And I love that. That was an amazing moment. So she's not good at her job. But to be fair, as I said, there are some other episodes where she actually is good at her job and does help people confront their feelings, such as in The Bond, where Jeremy Astor lost his mother in an away team mission, and this alien tried to steal her away, and Worf was like, I will help the boy, and she was very good at sort of sorting them out, and she was also very helpful when Alexander came on board and helping Worf deal with becoming a father all of a sudden. So she can be helpful at times, to be fair. But for the most part, there's too many times where she completely fumbles and sucks at her job for me to want her on my bridge. Anyway, so then we'll get into my next pick, which is Horra. Now, Horra it's similar to Bryce, but as I said, that even the original series had more development. So she did have more development than Bryce. But to be fair, for the most part, she just sat there and answered the phone and gave messages. But there were times where in the original series itself, and particularly the movies, she definitely shined a lot more. But there are times in the original series itself where they showed her as an expert at communication systems. So if they're having any difficulties, she was able to break through. She was able to do code breaking. And sometimes she was even able to give some really helpful advice to Kirk and crew. And as I said, the movie, she was a pretty badass, like tricking the stupid, overzealous ensign into letting them steal the Enterprise and stuff like that. And so she's definitely, I would say, much more accomplished than the people I had previously on my list. But on the other hand, she doesn't stand up that much. So I'll get into my next pick. Which is Hoshi Sato. Now, I know this may surprise a lot of people because Hoshi, she had a really rough start out because she was portrayed as the everyday person, the layman, as that was kind of just thrown into space and didn't really know what she was doing. But even though she was very naive in the ways of space travel and dealing with aliens, she was an absolute expert at her job, which was communication. In fact, if I think of the entire Star Trek franchise, if I think who is the expert at languages and communicating with alien languages, I think of Hoshi. It's because she did a tremendous job. In fact, in many cases, the crew was really dependent on her. Like, the crew would have been screwed in a lot of cases had she not been there, and they were extremely dependent on her to communicate with aliens and figure out the situation. And to be fair to the complaints that she was kind of naive and so, I don't know about space, and it was like, well, should the engine be making that noise? Like, that was just the first couple seasons. She actually had a lot of character growth, and by the time she got to the third season, she was able to survive being tortured by the Xindi, who used drugs to get her to try to crack this code that would allow them to destroy Earth. And to her credit, she even tried to kill herself rather than give the Xindi the ability to destroy Earth. But Archer was able to save her, and she was able to endure this torture, and was able to actually still go back on duty and help Archer destroy the weapon, which was a lot of credit to her. So I definitely would want her on my bridge. However, I almost went with her as number one, but I'll have to get into my number one pick, which I know a lot of people are going to be pissed off, because a lot of people have what I would describe as an irrational hatred of this character, where he never bothered me that much. And that, of course, is Neelix. Now, I have to give Neelix my number one spot, because I almost gave it to Hoshi, but as I said, Hoshi had that issue with not being very good at being in space and not being a very good officer and constantly doubting herself, where Neelix never really had that issue. And the thing with Neelix is that he was very good at his job. And his job, and I'm talking about being a chef, but I'm talking about his job of morale officer, of keeping the crew's spirits up. And he actually was very good at that. Now, again, the first couple of seasons, he was a bit of a dick, and he was very jealous of Paris or whatever. But even through those first two seasons, he actually was always there to help nourish the crew and spice things up. And he was a very good guide, by the way, that as well, in those first couple of seasons. But in the later seasons, they moved past the territory he was familiar with, so he was no longer helpful as a guide. In fact, they had this episode where he thought, oh, I'm useless now, the crew's gonna not need me anymore. But they did need him, because he was always there with the right holodeck program, or the right sort of way of looking at things, and he was able to really raise the crew's spirits at every time. And I think that was very important in a ship like Voyager that was trapped and alone. So it's very easy for a crew to fall into despair. In fact, they didn't even have a counselor or at least not that I'm aware of. Maybe there was a nothing character, but he was there to always keep the crew's spirits, morale up, and always had a positive attitude. And I think that was very important in a ship like Voyager, and I think that a lot of the crew would have suffered more if it wasn't for Neelix. And also, like, he became a good ambassador as well. He was able to, even when they got beyond the space he was familiar with, he was able to negotiate and communicate with aliens, species that Voyager just met, and smooth things over. And it was a huge asset to Janeway in that regard. So even though a lot of people have an irrational hatred of this character, I actually think he was the best at his job out of everyone on this list. And my number one pick is, in fact, Neelix. So that is it for my ranking of communication counselor and morale officers. I shall return to cover more positions. There are yet more on Star Trek that I shall be covering in the future. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. Also check out my channel for many more videos on Star Trek, as well as I do videos on other shows like The Expanse, Breaking Bad, The Outer Limits, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.